I've often said, I think it's true, that we Montanans are prouder of Montana than Texans are of Texas. We're just not so loud about it.
This is A New Angle, and I'm your host, Justin Angle, marketing professor at the University of Montana. This podcast is my chance to speak with cool people doing awesome things in and around the great state of Montana. We are proudly underwritten by First Security Bank and Blackfoot Communications. Hey folks, welcome back and thanks for tuning in today. Today we are bringing you a conversation with three amazing people. My dear colleagues here at the University of Montana, Sam Panarella, professor of law, and Sara Rinfret, professor and director of our Department of Public Administration and Policy, join Montana legend Max Baucus, former United States representative, senator, and ambassador to China. Why have we assembled these great folks? Well, we've done it to talk about some of the great stuff happening over at the Blewett School of Law. What they've put together through the law school, the Baucus Institute, and the Department of Public Administration and Policy is super interesting. They've created a set of opportunities and experiences for students that are truly distinct. I was honored to be a part of this conversation, and I'm excited to bring it to you right now. Okay, so we're here today with Sam Panarella, Sara Rinfret, and Max Baucus. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
You bet. Thank you.
So, Max, I mean, you introduce yourself as Max. You go by Max, and I don't even know the protocol for honorific titles. I mean, we could go representative, senator, ambassador, and what is there a protocol for what title people sort of go by?
No, one thing it's just so great about our state. Well, we're egalitarians in Montana.
Yeah.
We're all together. And one thing I remember, and I was running for office a long time ago, boy, you don't put on airs in our state. Once you do, people start tearing you down, which is different from some other states, especially some of the more populous states. And I love it. We are who we are.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're here today to sort of celebrate the, this is the launch of a sort of the Department of Public Administration and Policy, which is now a part of the Max S. Baucus Institute at the Alexander Blewett School of Law. I think got all these, speaking of titles, right? Gosh. Did I do it right there?
You got
Sam,
it.
correct me. Did I do anything wrong?
That's perfect, Justin.
Okay,
Great
good.
job.
So it's a big day. It's past the Board of Regents a week or so ago, and I wanted to start with, what is the Baucus Institute? What's it all about? How did it come to be? And why here at the University of Montana?
Yeah, I when I left the Senate, decided, gosh, where am I going to put my papers? Got to send them someplace back home.
And what do you mean by? I just want to interject. What you say papers? What does that mean? What does the listeners
good
think
question. All the speeches and emails and casework and all our committee work, finance committee, for example, health committee that we pursued back during the 36 years that I was in the Senate. There's a lot there, and it's about 1,000 boxes.
Wow.
More than that, and it's pretty expensive to categorize it all, to archive it all. And I was surprised. But I decided, after frankly visiting MSU and Helen over at Carroll and around different places, hey, the logical place, the best place is the UM here in Missoula. And partly because the Mike Mansfield Foundation is here in Missoula. And I really revered Mike over the years. He's really one of my big inspirations to get into public service. And it just made sense to put the papers here in Missoula. And if the papers are here in Missoula, the next question is, gosh, if I'm going to set up a public policy institute, where should it be? And it's a pretty easy decision. Well, the papers are here in Missoula, the university, law school, so I'll set up the institute here. Why an institute? Basically, I just believe very much in public service.
Okay.
My professional life has been public service, about 40-some, more than that, years. Both in the Senate and also over in China, representing our country. And I just said, okay, now that I'm no longer in public service, I want to keep active. I want to maintain an interest in public service and encourage more people to get into public service. Why? First, I liked it so much, public service. It was very, very rewarding. In the House, in the Senate, and as a pastor over in China. Why? Because I just like helping solve problems, putting people together,
Sure.
Finding solutions. and help make us a better place. I know it sounds kind of corny and trite and all that, but I believe it.
No, it sounds very inspirational right now.
It's a lot of fun. I just enjoy trying. Sure, you get set back a little bit, but it's fun.
Yeah.
So I decided, let's set up an institute, and let's do it here in Missoula.
Sure. And now Sam is the director of the Institute. Is that correct? And how long ago was the Institute established?
So it was, thanks, Justin. It was established about 3 years ago, but we got off to a little bit of a rolling start, and that had to do, frankly, with Max being the ambassador in China, sitting ambassador, and we went to the State Department when we first started the Institute and asked them, so who can we raise money from? This is a completely privately funded institute. It should be said, no state support, no UM support financially. And so we needed to raise money for the Institute. We went to the State Department and asked them, who can we raise money from? And they said, well, it's easy. You can ask anybody for money. Donors can be, as long as they're not doing business in China right now.
Oh, right. Okay. So tons of conflicts of interest potentially to navigate.
Right, even more so. Or have the potential to do business in China in the future, which is effectively eliminated everyone, except for maybe one or two people.
Yeah, like if I buy a product that was imported from China, does that disqualify me?
Right. So that was tough. But Max came home to Montana, and at that point, we were able to really start the fundraising. So we've been around for about 3 years. I think we've really been up and running for about a year and a half or so, about 18 months.
And just to be clear, Sam, you are a professor of law in the law school, and this is part of your portfolio of activities here.
It is, right. So I'm a full professor at the law school, and then I do this as well in addition to that.
Okay.
Direct the
Well, we
institute.
pay him for it. We get a little money, so in addition.
That's right. As Max reminds me, I
But
do
Sam
get
doesn't do any
compensation.
business in China, right? So
I don't. I do no business in
Yeah,
actually,
there
it's
you go.
not true. But I do it. It's a labor of love for sure.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And Sarah, you're a relatively new member of the School of Law and the newly sort of formed Department of Public Administration and Policy is now not only housed within the School of Law, but within the Baucus Institute. Can you tell us about kind of why that is the appropriate home for the work you do?
Yeah, we're really excited. Like Max was talking about, we're really committed to public service. And so we're training the next generation of public and nonprofit sector employees. And so we felt like this is a really great opportunity for us to not only give back to our state, but to give our students the best educational opportunity that we could out of the University of Montana. And so we've been working on this for about the last year and really excited. So typically public administration and policy programs are in institutes. Mm-hmm. And so we feel like, this really great nexus between law, policy, and public service is a really innovative model that you would think people are doing across the nation, but we're the first in the U.S. to have this model in terms of law, policy, and public administration and public service, and we're really excited about it.
Excellent. And so Max, let's talk a little bit about, having been in public service for so many years and done so many amazing things in different positions, now after sort of that phase of your career has closed, you must get asked by so many people to attach your name to this cause or this issue or this organization. How do you make choices about where to allocate your efforts and your association as you sort of navigate new opportunities for you?
Well, one very major criteria is service and how to encourage more people to spend more time thinking about and involved in public service.
Okay.
I think that's needed today with increased partisanship, not only in Washington, but to some degree in our state. And the only way to deal with that is just take it head on. Just encourage more people to get more involved and do it in a way where it opens their eyes and they see that, hey, I kind of like this. I like serving. So how do we do that? One is we call it our Leaders Program. We select 10 Montana college-age students and put them through a program here in Missoula, then send them back, all expenses paid, to Montana congressional delegation offices and other federal offices.
Okay.
We only have 3 in our delegation, so we got to spread it out.
Yeah.
10, 3 plus 7. And they're there for a couple, 3 months. As I said, all expenses paid. And they come back, and my gosh, they're on fire. It's so interesting to them. They're so excited. You talk to the kids, and they come back. So, 10's 10, so we're going to keep doing this and build up more than 10. But that's a huge part of this. Get Montana kids so excited about public service that they will then get involved in public service themselves rather than maybe pursuing some other profession that maybe not be as rewarding as service is. So that's a lot of what we're doing. The Masters of Public Administration program is really cool too. That's excited about it. Oh, I'm excited about all of it. But that's a program, Sara can explain it better, and she probably will explain it better. But essentially, we're helping people who work for state government to learn even more and do a better job.
Sure.
And how to interact properly and constructively with people, and that they work with, and with both branches of government. It's and frankly, I'm really proud of this. One of our illustrious graduates is our Attorney General, Attorney General Fox, and I mean he liked it so much that oh my gosh, he's out raising money for it, and he's so excited about it. So those are two of the areas. We'll talk about others later, two other parts of the program, but those are two: the Leaders Program and the MPA program.
Sure. So we're thinking about like how to best prepare students from Montana and beyond for careers in public service. I mean, a lot of the attributes you're talking about, Max, were sort of hallmarks of your career: this collaboration, compromise, which has kind of become a dirty word in our current politics, and the ability to work with other people effectively and take on alternate perspectives. Can get maybe Sam and Sara, can you talk a little bit about how you can actually teach those values and those things in a curriculum?
Sure. So I think as long as there have been humans, there's been this human tendency to privilege one's own lifespan, right? So people have been saying for as long as there have been people, we live in interesting times.
Right.
And mostly they're wrong, right? Mostly people don't really live in interesting times. But I actually think we are living in interesting times, and not always in a positive way, but and I don't need to belabor the point. I think everyone understands that these are difficult times for whatever your politics might be. They're difficult times for collaboration and understanding and reaching across barriers. And it's just not part of the fabric, unfortunately, of a lot of what we see out there. And so, Sara mentioned that what we're doing at the university and at the law school with the institute is one of a kind. And I want to make that point, and I want to emphasize that point. I think I grew up in Montana, and I know that we in Montana, the university and elsewhere, don't like to brag on ourselves very much. And I think we often do a pretty poor job of getting the word out about how great we are. It's not really a Montana way to be, right? We're understated. We don't talk about it. What we're doing, so
we don't make podcasts about it.
Well, but present company excluded, of course. But I want to brag.
We're not bragging. We're explaining.
That's it. We're explaining. This is one of a kind. I mean, the word unique gets misused a lot. This is actually unique, right? This is truly the only program like this where students. I'm getting to your question, Justin. I promise. But where we can give students multiple different entry points into public service. So we have law students, we have MPA students or DPAP students, we have students who interact with the Institute through the Baucus Leaders Program that Max mentioned. Those are often not law students or MPA students. There may be undergraduate students who do that. The cohort includes all throughout the campus students from all over the place. We have a China program we haven't talked a lot about where we bring 20 to 25 students to China every summer. That's a mix of different kinds of students. So we have this sort of multi-door public service approach that a student, the only place they can come in the country to get those kind of opportunities is here. And that's what we're so excited about.
And so, Sara, let's talk about the classroom. How does this kind of come to life in the classroom in terms of the experiences students have and the values the faculty bring to that education?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we really pride ourselves on is that everyone that teaches in our department has a practitioner background. And so, again, that nexus of law, policy, and public service. But we kind of wear that as a badge and say, we've all, I was a policy analyst before, and Sam was a practicing lawyer before. And so that's something that we want to share with our students. And so our mission is apply that theory to practice and provide those applied learning experiences. But I mean, you and I work on the Big Sky Poll together. really public service cuts across all disciplines. And so if you're going to enroll in one of our programs, you don't have to have a background in, public policy. I mean, we have students with a chemistry background, law, sociology, psychology, because if you think about it, every government agency at the state, local, and federal level, you're bringing together a variety of disciplines to solve, public sector problems. And that's what we're really excited about. And to your point, too, about kind of the messiness of public policy making, we always talk about, we go back to our founding father of public administration is Woodrow Wilson. And so he talks about how we have to separate ourselves from politics, which is not really the case, but just being value neutral in the decisions that we make. So when we're writing policy memos, from our expertise, if you're working for the EPA or the Department of Defense, that we are career civil servants and we're there to uphold not only the oath of the Constitution, but also to pay attention to the people that we serve on a day-to-day basis and trying to set aside our biases when we enter in, our department, our agency, or maybe municipality at the city level, and that we're really there to serve the public. And it's really exciting to be in that space.
I might jump in there. One thing that just strikes me is, having served in the legislative branch of government for a good number of years, I got to tell you, so often we don't know what we're doing.
Okay.
We think we know. And we pass laws and think, oh, gee, this is about as good a job we could do, but we don't know all the details. Mm-hmm. And that's where the MPA program comes in, because so much is delegated to administrative officials, and it's so the practical experience that they get is so important, in addition to the academic abstractions, just interacting with how you do things, but in a way that's effective, trying to interpret what the heck Congress or Montana legislature had in mind. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes they didn't know what they had in mind. Mm-hmm. And so you just got to figure out what's best. It helps in a most constructive way with the people that you're dealing with.
And how do you help students sort of navigate, what sorts of service-oriented careers they should get into, whether they want to be a policy wonk, whether they want to run for office, whether they want to do something else, or some combination of all those things?
Well, Sam and I can talk about this, but now you come to UM because we have like a menu of options, right?
There you go.
So, and I think too, because like Sam said, we don't brag about ourselves in Montana. Mm-hmm. And so where else can you come in the United States that you have law, policy, and public service all in one umbrella?
Yeah. And I think, Justin, it's a great question. And I think the answer, at least my answer, is exposure, right?
Okay.
I mean, we're dealing with, and I'm father of an 18-year-old and a 21-year-old. So I know this from firsthand experience. They don't really know. We all remember being 18 probably, and you don't know much. You have a bunch of passion, hopefully, and ideas about what you might want to be, but you don't have a lot of direction yet. Sure. And I know Max tells a story about his undergraduate years when he took a class, and I'll let you tell it, Max, but that really got him inspired and kind of led him on the path that he's ended up. So what we're trying to do at the university, at the law school and the institute, is to give students multiple opportunities to be exposed to, for example, the Leaders Program to D.C. and what that looks like. Okay. To China and what international law and policy might look like. So, those different opportunities, they won't all be for every student, but if we can give them the chance to see those things, something's going to get them fired up. Something's going to, as Max said, something's going to light them on fire, right? And that's what we're trying to do. And that's why we're so excited, and we keep bragging. Now we are bragging, right? Un-Montana-like, but about those opportunities.
And it occurs to me, and I want to get to the China program for sure, but before we do, Sara and I, we came to UM and Montana at about a similar time. We've both been here about 7-8 years. Max and Sam, you're natives of the state and have made your lives here. It occurs to me, and I don't know if Sara shares this observation, but there's something pretty unique about Montana and the Montana politics. And, people from the outside that don't really know what Montana's about, they say, how on earth do you have, a Democratic governor and one of the reddest senators ever? And they're just confused by how the state can sort of be purple in its own unique way. Max, can you speak to that and how Montana and maybe the values of this state contribute to this ability for us to put together this unique experience for our students?
Well, I think there are a couple factors here. One, it's an overworked trite phrase, but it's true. Montana is one big small town.
Yeah, okay.
We tend to have connections statewide. Aunt Bessie may be out there in Plentywood. Uncle Tom's is over in Harlem. I mean, we tend to know each other, and word of mouth is very important, and that means relationships are important, and trust is important. Either you're trusted or not trusted. When you look somebody straight in the eye and see how he or she is reacting, and we're able to do that better in Montana than can people in other states. That's very important. It gives us a big advantage, I think.
A New Angle is underwritten by First Security Bank and Blackfoot Communications, two cool companies doing awesome things all over Montana.
This is Cameron Lawrence, MIS professor in the College of Business, and you're listening to A New Angle.
Second, we're an outdoor state. Everybody in Montana loves the outdoors. Either work outdoors, logging, mining, whatnot, or it's our avocation.
Yeah.
And just hunting, fishing, et cetera, et cetera. We love it. And that connects people to values that I think transcend what people otherwise would not find in more urban environments. So that combination enables us to think and reflect a little bit. We have more time alone a little bit, so we can think a little bit more about what really is important. And I think those are two reasons why we get a little bit of a leg up on working together.
Mm-hmm. Any additional thoughts on that, Sara and Sam?
I think I agree with that. I also think that I got dressed, and I have to correct the record because I know how it is. I actually wasn't born in Montana. I did grow up here, so I just want to make sure that's clear before the natives get on my case.
I do want to plant a little pin there, like your story, and we won't get into it now, but that's a future episode.
Okay, great. Anyway, and what Max said is absolutely right. And, I think that part of the answer, at least it seems to me, is the pride that Montanans have in Montana. And I've done a lot of traveling in my career and my life, and I've never met a people who are more proud of where they're from, which is lovely, right? I mean, Alaskans might be the only people I can think who can give us run for our money in that way. And I think when you're proud of your place, you take better care of it. And part of taking better care of it is working harder to understand the people that live with you in that state, even if they don't have the same political views or social views that you do. And I think we just work harder. We're not perfect by any means, but I think we work harder to understand each other in Montana than people might do elsewhere. And I think that just to listen, right, to have the conversations, to take the long runs together with people who you might not agree with anything about, but accept the fact that you love this long run or this fishing hole or whatever else it might be. And so it is a special place. It's not a perfect place, but it's a special place. I think it's part of the reason why.
I think something that captures that point is that I've often said, I think it's true, that we Montanans are prouder of Montana than Texans are of Texas. We're just not so loud about it.
Well said.
And it's a paradox, which I think sort of defines us.
Yeah, it makes sense. Sara, how's that fit with your experience, having come here about the same time I did?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a native Montanan. I think you always aspire to be. So I grew up in Ohio, and I have been involved in politics since I think it was 4. I used to go door to door with my dad, so I thought that was just a normal lifestyle, right? And you talk about politics at the dinner table. But one thing that I've seen, because Ohio has really interesting politics too, but it's pretty divisive, I think, and especially what's going on nationally. But one thing that was really great moving to Montana is I just think people just have really strong empathy and compassion because you are a next door neighbor to someone. So you probably know your city council member because they're your next door neighbor. Or, what other state that I can email Max Baucus and he emails back? Or you can call the governor's office and the governor will call you back the next day. And so I think that's one thing that we really stress in the classroom, just the access for opportunity to have those conversations because we are one big small town. I think it just really provides opportunities for our students that other students don't have across the nation. And I think our students are awesome here too. I mean, they work exceptionally hard. They don't complain. And they're all working probably 40 to 60 hours a week, which I wish wasn't the case, and we can do better for that. But I don't know. I just think it's really impressive and just an honor to work at UM because of that.
Yeah, and speaking of opportunities for students, let's pivot to this China program and some of the other components of the Baucus Institute. So, well, you can tell the history, Sam or Max, but obviously coming out of your heritage is the ambassador to China and the tradition of the Mansfield family and the Mansfield Center here. Let's talk about the China program and what that means for students.
Yeah, I'd love to. So I'm actually, and it's very topical because we're planning the program right now. So
Okay.
and I'll be brief, although I could gush on forever about this. But
Gush
what we
away.
do,
This is all about bragging today.
yeah, right.
We got nothing but bandwidth on this disc I'm recording on.
Good.
Right?
Well, we're very off-brand for Montana, but that's fine. So what we do, in short, is we bring a cohort of students, and actually University of South Dakota is involved in the program
Great.
as well. So mostly Montana kids sign up, and we're bringing 25 over this summer. And so we bring them over, it's for a month, and it's a comparative law program, law and policy program. So what we do is we bring them over there at school. They get credit for it, 6 credits. We're there for a month. We're in 2 different places, a place called Chongqing and a place we've all heard of called Beijing. Chongqing is fascinating because, and I do this at cocktail parties, which is why people don't invite me to cocktail parties, but I ask people, have you heard of Chongqing, China? And almost nobody has heard of Chongqing. Sure. And I say, can you guess the population? And people say, well, it's China. It's got to be, at least 5 million people. The population of Chongqing is 32 million people. Wow. And most Americans have never heard of Chongqing. It's sort of in the southwest part of China. A great place, a really interesting place. But we bring students over there, and we have comparative law and policy classes. So for this summer, for example, I'm teaching a comparative climate change class in China. I'll teach half the class, and I'll teach sort of the American side of climate change, our laws and legislation and policies around it. And then I have a Chinese professor cohort who will teach in English, thankfully for all of us, and teach the Chinese view of that, their law, their policy, how they view it. And we do that with family law. We do that with criminal law.
Wow.
And the students, and here's the important thing, and this is something that I've always insisted on, is that it's not us in a classroom by ourselves. We always have Chinese students with us.
Sure.
So I insist that we have at least as many Chinese students in the class as American students.
Okay.
And that's where the magic happens, is to get to know those Chinese students. There are a lot of overseas programs. Every law school has them, almost every law school. And what they mostly do is they'll go to Florence, Italy, and they'll rent a nice room in Florence, Italy, and they'll sit there together in Florence, Italy, and have class, which is really cool. But it's just like having class in America, except in an older place, right? So it's not that meaningful. What's meaningful about our program is and again, this all sounds really trite, but it's so true. The relationships the students form with each other, the friendships, the cultural understanding. Again, it's so trite sounding, but so true. The realization that, hey, you're just like me, right? You want many of the things I want. You worry about many of the things I worry about. But in some ways we're different, and your views of the world are different and are shaped by your culture. And what the coolest thing about it is that we will bring these 25 students over every summer. 20 to 22 of them have never left the United States before.
Yeah.
And if you can imagine landing in China for your first ever overseas experience, and
maybe
spending
even
a
your
month
first
there.
airplane.
Some of them their first airplane ride. Some of them their first time out of the Rocky Mountain Northwest. A few of them their first time out of Montana. And just watching them over the course of the month, and I'm there for the whole month as the director and one of the profs, just watching them open up and have these experiences and eat the food, and at first blanch and it's too hot, and then a week later they can't get enough of it, right? It's just transformative. So I always will ask the students afterwards how it went, do a little survey. And I think I know, because I like numbers, I think I know, we're about 190 for 190. Everybody has a great time there, and the reviews this is not about me. These are not reviews of me. They're of the program. Things like, it changed my life. I hear all the time. And so giving Montana kids that opportunity is, if we just did that, I think the whole thing would be worth it. And the people diplomacy that I know Max really cares about and cared about, that's where it's at right now. And so that's, in short, the program.
I'd like to add a couple of points there. For one, correct me, Sam, because you're directly participating, but these Chinese kids really know a lot about the United States. Mm-hmm. They ask excellent questions, even about our legal system. It's almost stunning how much they know. which means it's a great involvement, U.S. and Chinese students. Second, this kind of gives us in Montana a bit of a leg up on the future. What do I mean? I think the most important bilateral relationship right now is between U.S. and China. China is so different. The United States is so different from China. And it's the old Thucydides trap question: rising power, established power. China's rising. We're the established power. How are two countries going to work together? And it's a question. The jury's still out. So the more Montana students are over in China and think more about China and more involved in China, the more likely it is that we in Montana will have a little better idea of A, what's going on, and B, maybe some ideas on how to deal with it and solve it. That's something we have in Montana that others don't have. And I think it's partly, additionally, because of the structure of the program. It's not just going around and, sightseeing. It's direct involvement with students.
Right. And so what are some of you said you got equal numbers, Chinese students and students from the University of Montana. How do these conversations go when you're comparing, what's going on in the United States with climate change and what's going on in China with climate change?
Yeah. It's fascinating. They go. There's probably no one size fits all. A couple of things that happen every year. So first of all, before we go over, I have a conversation with our students, and a big part of the conversation is, and it's really important to me that I always convey to them that we are not going over there to convince the Chinese that our country is better than theirs, right? And that's not our job, and it's not appropriate, right? And that the Chinese, and I've noticed this over the last 8 years, and I bet Max, you've noticed something similar. There's more China pride over the last. I've really noticed that even the young Chinese people are more overt about their pride in their country, which for some very good reasons. They are, and they're, like Max mentioned, they have made a study of these are young people that I'm talking about, right? 18, 19, 20-year-olds in China Law is an undergraduate program. They have watched all the TV shows. They've watched Friends. They've watched The Office, every episode, just like my kids have. And so that gives them an interesting, somewhat unusual, kind of accurate view of America. We're not nearly as good looking or rich as they think we might be based on the TV shows. When they meet us in person, they think, oh, okay. But so they have certain preconceived notions. American students have some, but I think most young Americans don't think a lot about China.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah, don't really think a lot about Chinese people. And so what I observe in the program, so when we get there, the first night I take everyone to dinner, and everyone thinks I'm the most generous person in the world until I tell them afterwards that I paid for 30 people to have hot pot, which is a traditional food in Chongqing, and some drinks and others, and it's cost me about $200. And then they realized it wasn't that generous. But we have dinner together, and I mostly observe and see them start to talk with each other. And what always surprises the American students is that the young Chinese people are much more willing to have conversations about, like Max said, they'll for the last couple of years, the conversations starts this way. A Chinese student will say to an American student, "What do you think of Trump?" Right? That's often an opener.
Yeah.
Which is a big question.
Yeah,
there's a lot there. And then the American student will give his or her thoughts about that, and then we'll say, "What do you think of Xi Jinping, the Chinese equivalent?" And the Chinese student will talk about that, and they'll have conversations that touch on the South China Sea, on Taiwan, on Tiananmen Square. They will have those conversations, and I'm not in the middle of those conversations. Those are personal conversations, but watching them, and they'll ask us about 9/11 and about other things in America, and just watching those conversations happen is pretty incredible.
I might add, I find the Chinese to be a bit more candid than Americans. As Sam just explaining, right off the top, out of the chute, start asking very direct questions, not condescending questions, not arrogant questions, but constructive questions.
Introspective.
And constructive, curious. want to know
Yeah.
what's happening. What do you think, and so forth. It's not to put anybody down. And I that's something I think sort of indirectly the Americans could learn. I'm sure all Montana law students don't need to learn that; they already know. But anyway, it's a. I think people are surprised at the candor when they talk to Chinese.
Yeah, and a lot of the sort of structure and experience and curriculum you're laying out there, Sam, it seems to align with Max, what I've heard you sort of emphasize in terms of the values you should bring to public service. Building relationships, understanding other perspectives. So how is your experience as not only ambassador, but in Congress sort of informed how we go about building the right experiences for students at the Institute?
It's listening. Over life, I've learned the hard way. The more you listen, the more likely it is you're going to figure out a solution here. Put yourself in the other person's shoes and walking around and so forth. And add to that, it's being curious.
Yeah.
Real curiosity, and asking questions like, why is that? That's interesting. Okay, no, but why is that? And then you start seeing clues and look at assumptions behind people's points of view. And it's intellectually challenging, and rewarding. But B, it gets you toward a solution. Sam made a point which I think is very accurate. I think Chinese people, American people, are basically alike.
Okay.
In what way? Look, most people want a decent job.
Mm-hmm.
They want food on the table. Most people, whether Chinese or Americans, want decent health care, clean air and water, and just be able to live a decent, good life, be left alone a little bit, opportunity for your creativity. We're alike. Chinese and Americans. In fact, I think that's worldwide. It was not just Americans and Chinese. And the more we understand that, the more that's a bridge to solutions. And that's something that's discovered pretty quickly when you go over there.
Yeah, and starting with a focus on how we're alike and similar in things we share seems like the pathway forward.
And I know Sam didn't mean this, but there was a slight implication in something he earlier said, is when we go over, we don't tell them what to do. My view is we don't tell them what to do because we're no better than they. We are no better than they. We have a system rooted in our Constitution, our Declaration of Independence, the Judeo-Christian ethic, brought over from Europe, etc. That's ours, and we're proud of it. We think it works for us. Chinese have theirs, totally different, and they think it works for them. And as Sam said, they're getting more proud of what they're doing. There's more bounce in their step, a little spring. Hey, we're Chinese. We're rising. We're back. And so the key here, in my judgment, is not to say, hey, this is the way you do it. The key is to try to, it's like two people, like a marriage.
Yeah.
It's how we got to get along here. Let's figure out how we do all this. And it is like it's really, in some respect, like an arranged marriage.
Okay.
Not based on love, but it's arranged. It's arranged by history, economic and political history. And we're here. There's no divorce. There's no separation.
Right.
We've got to work it out. And the more we realize, hey, we are here together. We're not going to the moon. We're not going to Mars. Maybe Elon Musk's going to send one country up to Mars. I don't know. But that's way down the road.
Yeah.
For the time being, we got to work together.
And what you're describing, is complex. And that's one of the things that we struggle with as a culture is sort of grappling with complexity, understanding it, admitting that it exists, and having the curiosity to sort of do our best to understand it. That speaks to the importance of how we educate students. So, one of the things I know that you bring to the classroom, Sara, and then the public administration program is diversity of thought and trying to create situations where students have to deal with complexity.
Yeah, I think, like we talked about earlier, we live in a very complex world, and so especially as the next generation of policymakers, but even public administrators, like Max spoke about earlier, we're the ones that have been delegated the authority to interpret that very often vague legislation. and piece it together and implement it and carry it out, so it kind of protects the water that we drink and the air that we breathe. And it's often complex, but I think the classroom, it's a space where you have to have a collection of ideas and allow everyone to kind of, express their thoughts and their interpretation of what we're doing. Because if not, it's not a best practice.
Right. So, you guys have got to move on to the next phase of your day, the ribbon cutting ceremony over at the law school. But let's talk about what are we missing in terms of other stuff going on at the Institute. We've got the Department of Public Administration and Policy, the China program. It's a home for the papers. What else? What else is going on?
So thanks for the opportunity. Those programs we're really proud of, and they keep us quite busy. There's one other area that and it's a little more nascent than the programs we have now. Max's time in the Senate, he did a tremendous amount of work on natural resources and the environment, including the Rocky Mountain Front and a lot of protections up there, Clean Air Act amendments of 1990. And that's a legacy of Max's that is really important to us as an institute and us as a state. So this idea, I've been sort of thinking of it lately as collaborative conservation, this idea of finding ways, and it's obviously really applicable here in Montana, finding ways to balance our desire to have and keep open spaces and protected areas, but also our understanding that we need to utilize some of our natural resources, and that one I think example of that's happening right now is in Colstrip, right? Which I teach an energy law course, and thinking a lot about the town of Colstrip and the need for that coal-fired, or really what's going to happen there is the coal-fired plant is likely to be shut down, at least a couple of units here in the next few years, and so that's a sort of recognition of air quality and et cetera in Montana. It's important, but it's also there are hundreds or even thousands of people in Colstrip who rely on that plant for their livelihood. And what about those people? And so we're still sort of in early stages of thinking how the Institute can play a role as a facilitator or in other respects with this idea of collaborative conservation, right? And to honor the legacy that Max and others set in the Senate, but also to sort of recognize that this is going to be an issue for the state. It is an issue, and it's going to be an issue going forward. We need to play in that area as an institute for all kinds of reasons. There is a program at the university that does touch on that around natural resource conflict resolution that we're involved with, but not we're still sort of figuring out how to make that something that fits our institute. So that's probably the other area that we're talking about. We're also, I got to put a quick plug in, we are going to have this fall our second annual Board of Advisors meeting and the Baucus Lecture. We're still speakers TBD, but we're really, and that's going to be in late September this year. Last year we had Maureen Dowd and Carl Hulse, as you'll remember, Justin, here. So we're in the planning stages for that, and we're getting real excited about that and have some pretty big ideas. So that's just a teaser of coming attractions.
Well, I got to say that one of the kind of things that I've liked exploring in this podcast generally are areas, things not only going on here, but nationally, internationally, whatever, that give you hope that institutions can contribute to leading us through these challenging times, as you outlined, Sam. And so it seems like the Baucus Institute is exactly that sort of entity. And so thank you, Max. Thank you, Sara. Thank you, Sam, for the work and contributions and giving us a place where students can go to learn the skills they need and the sort of way of thinking they need to kind of make the world a better place. I mean, that sounds trite, as you said before, Max, but it's absolutely true in this instance.
Yeah, I sometimes say and believe sometimes the trite things are the most true.
Yeah. Cliches are cliche for a reason.
That's right. Everything is teamwork too, and I want to thank you, Justin. You're part of the team here. You asked some very good questions and probing in a very good way. Yeah.
Well, try to be curious, right?
Right.
I mean, that's the value that we're all trying to instill in each other. So. Right. Thanks for coming on the pod, sharing some time on a busy day, and congratulations on the ribbon cutting, and we'll see you again down the road.
You got it.
Thanks, Justin.
Thank you.
Okay, well, that was super fun. For more info, visit umt.edu/law and check out some of the amazing work going on over there. Okay, coming up next week, we have one of Missoula's finest, Mark Moss, creator and host of the amazing storytelling event, Tell Us Something. Check it out next week. Thanks for listening to New Angle. We really appreciate it. And we're coming to you from Studio 49, part of the Michelle and Lauren Hansen Media Lab at the University of Montana College of Business. Remember that this podcast was supported by CED, Consolidated Electrical Distributors. These guys pretty much sell anything electrical you'd ever need, but they also hire a ton of our students. If you want to learn more about jobs at CED, visit cedcareers.com. Before we go, I want to thank some important peeps. Executive producer, Stefan Borsum. Producer, Aidan Morton. And interns, Aspen Runkle, Max Gibson, and Ellie Hanasek. Huge thanks to VTO, Jeff Ament, and John Wicks for the tunes. And finally, props to Jeff Meese, our master of all things sound. Finally, if you have any questions, suggestions, comments, insults, whatever, please email me at anewangle@umontana.edu. Help us spread the word, and be sure to use the hashtag #anewangle when you do. Thanks a lot. See you next time.